All right, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we are in lovely Midtown Memphis, my favorite part of Memphis, and I'm here talking to
John Upton.
And we are going to be discussing some of your photographs. You've done some film work too.
Yeah, I've worked on a couple. I originally how it started, and I guess this is kind of where the project comes from. I have a film degree. My first degree was film. Then I run away from home to Ole Miss and get a degree in recreational therapy. And they said I didn't want to do that, so I go back and get a master's in statistics. So I've kind of done, you hit a wall, you take a right, hit a wall, take a right, hit a wall, take a right, and you end up back in the square one.
What were you going to do with statistics?
I was working at First Tennessee Bank for about 4 years, and it was not the best environment for me. It was a little cutthroat.
Sure.
That's not exactly the word. I mean, they were very, very nice bank, very progressive in their attitudes towards hiring and stuff like that. But just was not the right environment for me.
That world just seems like it's just very dog eat dog.
It's after 2008, after the fall,
right?
There's been so much change in regulation that banking is not what it was back in the 90s.
Oh, sure.
There's no company car. There's no everybody having a great time. It's we're trying to make things. They're trying to make things work. They're trying to make the bank successful. It's hard work and it's tense work.
Right.
And God bless people who are still doing it. Because we need banks.
Oh, sure.
But just was not fitting for me after a while. And last January, my father passed away, and I had I got some money. Mm-hmm. I inherited some money, and it wasn't millions of dollars or anything like that. But I said, you know what, this isn't working. I'm going to take a year off. My original plan was I was going to take this money and I was going to go to graduate school to get a graduate degree in film studies.
Oh, okay.
More interested in theory, critique, and there goes my phone. My bad. And it's your messenger saying you're here.
Ha
That's how fast. That's how fast the network works. Looked into the film school here, and I was just not going to be able to afford it. And I hear, from what I've understood, getting a GA is much harder now than it was 4 or 5 years ago. Just like, I can't afford that.
Sure.
So I said, okay, I'm going to buy a really good camera. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get a really good computer. I'm going to get all this equipment. And I'm just going to DIY something, maybe just make YouTube content or whatever. And in the meantime, got my first gig on ARV3.
Right.
And that's where we met. Mm-hmm. And was kind of... It was I really couldn't back into an experience that I hadn't been in 20 years.
Right.
In 20 years. And
was it a lot different 20 years later?
Well, you know what? When I was doing it in film school, it was me and 2 buddies were all the crew.
Right.
And we had, you just had to pray to God it worked.
Right.
And we had to film. We didn't have video, so we had to, you got it or you didn't.
Exactly. Yeah, and you wouldn't know
you wouldn't know for weeks.
Yeah.
And now you have that immediate playback and all this newfangled equipment, and it's like really just sort of all new stuff. But after working on that film, I was going home a lot and not really kind of putting myself out there. And I said, you know what? I want to learn this camera. I want to learn to take pictures again. So I called up a friend of mine, Larry Koznowski, who was a photographer here in Memphis. Mm-hmm. And I said, mentor me. And he was all about it. And I said, okay, here's what I want to do. And I was just picking out of the air. This is what I want to do. I wanted to do a photo show. And originally the idea that I had for this was completely different. And was just going to be just like a bunch of pictures that I took.
Right.
And I was sort of like, what is my show about? When you start really sitting down and thinking about it. And I came up with this theory, the story here, about a filmmaker who...
fictional filmmaker.
Fictional filmmaker.
Right.
Fictional filmmaker, right.
Mm-hmm.
Who made 3 movies.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of his 3rd movie, he said, screw it. He'd gone insane by this point.
Right.
And he just destroys all the prints of his film and all the posters and everything. And years later, they find this little shoebox of movie stills and pictures that were just promotional pictures. And so I'm sort of building the story from that. And kind of what this is based on is the name of the story is the unlegacy of a failed filmmaker.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you know what? I'm a failed filmmaker.
Right.
You know?
As many of us are.
Well, and it's sort of after I graduated film school, I moved out to Los Angeles, and I was there for an entire week. I was there for an entire week, and this was 1994. So this was, to give you time and place, this was right after Walking Phoenix died.
Oh, okay.
And I was crashing with a girl that I went to film school with, and she lived right off of Sunset Boulevard. It's like the whiskey was here, and then you go down that street that she's on, and there's her apartment.
Oh, wow.
And we went up and we walked by the Viper Room one day. We were just going out walking, which nobody apparently does in Los Angeles because it was deserted.
Oh, wow.
And we walked by the Viper Room, and there was just all these flowers there. I remember that. That was my biggest memory of being there, was just flowers everywhere right from the Viper Room.
Yeah.
And then we looked into the Viper Room, and everything was made of plywood. And I was really, that's the Viper Room. That's the big deal. It's all made of plywood.
Yeah.
You know, I was just sort of like...
What a metaphor for that town.
Well, and it is. And, you know, I was there, and I come from a town of about 5,000 people. Mm-hmm. I went to school 30 miles away from my hometown.
Right.
And the farthest I'd been for any length of time was to like New Orleans.
Right.
You know, my parents were not big believers in travel. You know, they're Depression era children, so they worked.
Right.
So we never did any big travel or anything like that. So going from South Mississippi straight to Los Angeles without ever having spent really any time in a big city,
right,
it scared the shit out of me.
I'm sure, yeah.
And I remember leaving town and crying all the way up over the hill to go, because there's the hill that separates sort of where you go to 29 Palms and entering Death Valley and all that stuff, and then you come over the bridge, over the hill, and there's Los Angeles. And I remember climbing that hill and just pouring tears. I was so humiliated and embarrassed that I was sorry. So I'm a big failure. Everybody was right. Everybody said I would be back home in 2 months, and I beat them to it within a week.
Right.
And so that's kind of where the story comes from, is sort of me going here and exercising that demon of having failed.
Right.
I didn't fail the way Walter Walters failed. That's the name of the filmmaker in the film. But there's a lot of stuff here. I keep getting bugged on my phone. I am so sorry. Of course, you know, one time I'm talking to people is when everybody calls, so I apologize for that, everybody who's listening.
They're calling in with questions for you.
Yes, well, no, it's an unrecognizable phone number, so I have no idea. So when I started this, I said, what do I love? Mm-hmm. And I remember as a kid, we would have these book fairs at our school, and you go by and pay like $1 for a book or whatever. Yeah. And they always had those monster movie books.
Oh, yeah.
And it would be all this folklore about like Dracula or whatever, and then it would have stills from like the 1939 Dracula, all the Peter Cushing stuff, all that, in there. And I just remember always loving the way that photo still looked, because it looked so much more romantic to me than an actual film.
Right, yeah.
And because it's out of place, it's out of sync, it lends me to my imagination.
Right, you bring your own content.
Right. Or it says, I want to find that and track that down.
Right.
And I would just, when I was in film school, I would just look through my film history books and just look at at this film stills and all this stuff, and just imagine, it would take me there. And I always enjoyed that more than, I don't understand. No, I love movies.
Right.
I love movies, but it fed my imagination more than it does sitting down in front of a screen.
Right.
So that's kind of where this was coming from. So basically what I did was I constructed that he had 3 films. Mm-hmm. And the first one is called Let's Kill Mommy. And it's supposed to be this mash of the bad seed and all these really, gaslight, all this stuff.
Is that the black and white one with the 2 kids?
Yeah, that's the black and white with the 2 kids.
Yeah,
and those are John Michael McCarthy. I keep getting their name mixed up with Morgan John Fox, because I keep wanting to call him John Morgan Fox.
Right.
When I talk about him, he was very cool about this and lent his kids, and he was like all about it. It was so cool. That's the coolest thing about this project is everybody I have asked has been like, yeah, sure, no problem. And through the process of this medium of doing this, I've gotten to where I enjoy doing this more than I work on movies.
Oh, yeah.
Just practicality reasons.
Sure.
Because I can have people over to the house and we can shoot in 2-3 hours.
Right.
And then I can go back and be by myself and look at the photos and see what I liked and what I didn't like. And I can process that. Whereas, working on these low-budget movies, you're there for 12 hours a day.
Yep.
Because you've got the camera for so long. You've got the site for so long, and you're trying to push it. And I'm just like, after about 4 hours, I'm really, it's just me. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done.
And then you got to work around people's schedules, and they can only be there for, they get off work at the pizza shop and change clothes. Yeah.
Right.
When you're creating these films, how do you write a film out, or do you kind of find the story as you're taking pictures?
Actually, it just sort of, originally there were going to be 6 movies. Uh-huh. And I had, that's what I planned. I was going to be like 2 or 3 pictures from each movie.
Right. And
then it got to, I said, okay, I came up with the titles first. In complete exploitation fashion, I came up with the titles and said, okay, let's create a movie to fit that. And then I sort of looked at Let's Kill Mommy and said, okay, what do I think of when I think of Let's Kill Mommy? Mm-hmm. What do I think of when I think of Damned Housewives?
Oh, that's a great name.
And the last one, Mother Switchblade.
That's so good.
What is that movie about? Mm-hmm. And what time did we do it? Because like the first movie is like 1967.
Okay.
Second movie is 1969. Second movie is like 1971. So if you look, everything kind of looks something that was done before 1967 in the first movie.
Right.
With like Bad Seed, Children of the Damned, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And with 1969, I'm seeing myself make a different shift here as I'm thinking what was going on in 1969. People were talking about women's liberation and stuff like that. And that's kind of where I got the idea for the Damned Housewives. And then around when Mother Switchblade was around, that's when, Divine and John Waters started hitting the scene. And the last film is supposed to be completely incoherent because the guy's crazy when he makes it.
Right.
And I said, who do I want to work with? I really wanted to work with drag queens. Mm-hmm. And didn't know them. Just said, hey, would you come shoot my stuff? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, wow.
That's
what surprised me more than anything is how game everybody's been.
Right.
And how nice it's been. And in return for that, for your time, I'm not going to keep you more than 2 or 3 hours,
Right.
that sort of logistic stuff. But everybody's been so generally interested into it. And everybody's really brought something of themselves to their shots and stuff. And I couldn't have asked for a better scenario. But the cool thing about what I'm doing, instead of going in and sitting and writing a whole movie, I just have to come up with an idea.
Sure.
I don't have to write a friggin' script.
Right.
I just say, okay, what do I think about these shots when I think about these movies? These shots, these 5 shots are what I think about. What about when I think about that? So that's right. Well, it's kind of about this. Is what was able to do. What I was able to tell the people who were in the shot, and say, okay, it's kind of about this, and then this is what you're doing in the shot, and the scene's supposed to be this, and so I don't have to really tell a whole story with these photos. What I'm wanting to tell you basically is the story of Walter Walters, not so much about the films.
Right. How much input do the models have on the story or the shots or the...
Actually, a really good story there. There is a woman, Nicole Wilborn, who plays Walter Walters' wife, who's she's African American. And I had originally wanted her to do a part it would have been a lot smaller. And then I met her, and I was just like, okay, what I'm getting here is not matching, but I like this woman.
Right.
So honestly, what I did was I went in and created the story more around her after having met her. And what her role is in this story is she's married to Walter Walters back in the mid-'60s, right after Loving versus Virginia, and they have but the problem is he's a big philanderer.
Right.
And the guy who plays Walter Walters, Trey Browder, is perfect for this role.
Right.
He is absolutely embodies Walter Walters, and I'm so happy with my cast. And she eventually has enough. She hits him over the head, and that's where he suffers brain damage. And that's where he goes from making that the last movie. And basically, I'm spoiling the whole story here, but she ends up going to prison, and he ends up going crazy. And the Dolores character ends up going to prison, and then gets out of jail and can't get a job, and she has to take menial jobs, and she's just pissed and can't get over it, becomes an alcoholic and dies.
Wow.
And it's kind of tragic.
Yeah.
But I was trying to think of what in the context of that time, because what I'm really interested in is, I grew up in a very, very, very Christian-dominated, very segregated town. Not very segregated as in there were still the white and black,
right,
colored sections or anything like that. But there was this sort of division, and I see it here in Memphis, of the white people over here, the African Americans over here, the Latinos over here, the Asians over here, and I don't see a big mix of that.
Right.
And I wanted to be able to tell a story where we kind of talked about race a little bit, particularly in this time right now.
Sure, yeah.
And talked about, I kind of touch upon transgender issues, or at least put them in front of your face with a photo.
Right. Is this story set particularly in Memphis, or is it?
It's non-specific.
Okay.
It's non-specific, but I think my work is always going to be flavored. What I'm working on next is, and what I hope to do a long series on in the future, based around ancient Greek mythology, very much dealing with issues of race. And because if you just finished reading about the Jason the Argonauts and Medea, and how Jason, Medea was a barbarian as opposed to being Greek.
Right.
So he was, it was just, did it make it easier for him to cast her aside?
Right.
And for a princess, for status.
Right.
And what I'm wanting to do there is working on how does that relate to issues of the day with regards to race.
Sure.
Because it colors everything I do.
Right.
I'm from Mississippi, and what I'm seeing in the news right now is really pissing me off.
Right.
With regards to the flags, the Confederate flags, and the shooting in South Carolina.
Right.
And more than that, the reactions that I'm reading on Facebook and articles and reactions and articles and talkback sections and articles. And
right.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to cuss too much, but
Oh, it's fine.
it just hurts me when I see a complete. Am I talking too much? Am I way off
No,
topic?
you're fine.
Okay.
Totally.
I'm one of these people. You ask me what time it is, and I tell you how to build a watch. So I apologize for that
Right.
up front. I want sort of, and it's something I see actually in the artist community here in Memphis. Is there's a division between races and stuff like that.
Oh, there definitely is. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel. It doesn't feel. It probably is more authentic and more unique to the way that Memphis actually is.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't feel that it's making movements forward.
Right.
And exploring relationships with other people.
Right. With this exhibit in particular, you're saying that you're using photographs to sort of inform people and to push those issues up. Is it something that's right at the forefront? Is it more subtle? Is it?
I think it's actually going to be a lot more subtle.
Right. How do you think that's going to work as opposed to, like, on Facebook, everything's in your face. Everything is about, this is the way I feel, this is the way I feel.
Yeah.
Taking a subtle approach, is that conscious, and is there something you're going for that?
Well, it's like there's the top layer. The top layer is the story of Walter Walters.
Right.
And then under that is the story of me as a failed filmmaker.
Right.
And then you can kind of, if you're doing diagrams here, I'm doing diagrams in my head.
Right.
There's issues of race, and there's issues with Dolores, and
right.
Her story of there's some nuances to his story, and then with the sort of the way men treat women,
right?
And then with Walter Walters being a philanderer, and then we have issues with transgenderism. Those are just right on the top of my. Those were sort of things that were coming out of it.
Right.
I didn't plan on it.
Sure.
I just wanted, the only thing I really, really planned in sort of story-wise of the Walter Walters story was Dolores.
Mm-hmm.
And then Walter Walters kind of filled himself in.
Is he based, how did you get your inspiration for him? Is he based on other filmmakers?
He's a mix. There's, now you ask me names, and I can't do names. Russ Meyer. There's a little bit of Russ Meyer there. There's a little bit of, the gentleman who made like the Tingler, William Castle.
Oh, William Castle, yeah.
And there's a little bit of showmanship, because in my mind, he made these films and put them out on the circuit of the Grindhouse circuit, and pretty much what, these road shows, people would take their films to town
mm-hmm.
to make profit back on their stuff, and they would promote them and spend like a year on the road with it, and that's kind of where that came from. But as far as it's not. He's an archetype.
Right.
He's an archetype. He's not a fully fleshed out character. The only really fully fleshed out character is the Dolores story. And I think more of what's going on is the story is Dolores' reaction to something else.
Right.
Stimuli. And then, she's sort of subsumed in this story. She doesn't really get her own identity
mm-hmm.
sometimes. And then we have these transgender issues, and that's just come apart because of, the whole story about Caitlyn Jenner for months. If you're, on the blogs and stuff, there were just, from last year, there was always talk about him being transgender,
right.
or she being transgender. And then we see people like Laverne Cox in the media.
Right.
And we see, the people, the drag queens I worked with, Demonica Santangelo, Aubrey Ombre, and then Tina Torch.
Mm-hmm.
I think two of those are in early process of transition.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about the whole transgender issues for me was getting used to being around the idea of it.
Sure.
Because it is so foreign, and it did freak me out. I'll be honest about it. And when I was talking to Demonica, I said, when we were talking about this project, I was saying, this is me getting over my issues with it.
Right.
And because I've always been intimidated by drag queens.
I think that's the point. I think they like that.
Yeah. But no, and then getting, because they are larger than life, and they are being something they're not, and it gives them this opportunity to be larger than life.
Right.
And to be, where I come from, it's just, you're very humble. You should be very humble and all this stuff, and not show yourself and not shine. And so when I would go from Columbia, Mississippi over to Hattiesburg, Mississippi to go to the gay bar,
mm-hmm.
I would just it's like, wow. And also, this is freaking scaring me. Because it was so far from my norm. And what I wanted, and what I got to do in meeting Demonica and Aubrey, and working with them, is they're really, really genuinely nice and really genuinely interested in entertaining too. So working with them ended up being so much fun, and getting to know them has been really, really nice. Demonica is genuinely one of the nicest people I've met, and as well as Aubrey and Tina. And getting to, I won't be best friends. Well, we just live in a different world. They're at night,
Right,
they live at night. They're at the 2:00 hour in the morning shows. I'm in bed by 9:30.
Right.
So our lives don't cross a whole lot, but I really have gotten to know them and have a real appreciation for them, and have just think they're amazing. I think they're amazing. And then what that's been able to do is working with them, I have been able to exercise that demon of a little bit of dealing with my own sexuality and being gay, and able to kind of put those demons to rest.
Right.
And also make peace with a part of my community that I did not feel comfortable with.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
And I hope it doesn't make me sound like an asshole. Because
well, I mean, I think that's one of the issues, I think, honestly, with it's so easy. Number one, it's so easy to create the other.
Yes.
And sometimes you don't even realize that that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then it leads to you being uncomfortable around a drag queen because they're not a person, they're a drag queen.
Right.
Or it leads to a white guy going into a black church and killing people that he does not see as people. I mean, there's varying degrees.
We objectify them as things. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think part of the problem is that in society we are not really forced to talk about that and even admit that that's what's going on. You just avoid.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And so anybody that can do that on any sort of level, no matter how small, how large, whatever it is,
mm-hmm.
I think that's a fantastic thing.
Right. One more thing about this show, and this has kind of been bubbling up recently, is I think that this is kind of my farewell to my film career.
Really?
Yeah. Now I continue. I'll continue to work, and I'm liking the medium. I'm working out where I'm going to be mixing narrative with photos.
Did you do photography before this?
No.
Oh,
no.
Wow. So it was just kind of a...
I mean, well, you know what? I did a little bit when I was living back home before I went to Ole Miss. I was working for the newspaper.
Okay.
And I had a picture that was on the front page of the paper one time that I took. And my mother still has it on her refrigerator.
That's awesome.
And that's so funny. And I also wrote a letter to the editor of the Clarion Ledger one time, long time ago. And she still has that on the refrigerator.
Oh, that's great.
So
when you got mentored on photography, did you start at square one, or you knew a little bit? Or?
I knew a little bit. I knew there was a big challenge of moving from film to digital.
Right.
And there was a big the chance, because, I understood 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
I understood, f-stop at that speed. And,
right.
But now I'm in ISO and stuff like that. So now I'm mixing. I had to go back and I had to study. I do a lot of study about shutter speed, about relearning f-stop basically because it'd been 20 years since I touched on this stuff. I knew what it was, and then I was looking at all this stuff online. It's like all my textbooks are so out of date. Yeah. All my technical manuals are so out of date. So it's just like I left, they're in my office somewhere. Right. But I haven't picked those up. But what I've been focusing on, what's new to me, has been Photoshop. Right. And Illustrator and all these things. And instead of having to go and get your film developed, you just plug the card in. Yeah. How easy is that? Yeah. And if you look at it, basically what I'm doing now is so much cheaper than making a film. Oh yeah. So much cheaper. Expensive. That's how I wrote a book, is because there's no way you could raise the money to do that. Right. And I'd written scripts for 10 years that I could never afford to make. So at some point you just find something else. Exactly. And then I like this format in another way because I'm doing all of it. Right. And there's so much that I'm not having to do. I'm not having to worry about a crew. Right. I'm not having to worry about sound. Right. I'm not having to worry about a lot of things. And probably at the end of the day, this art form that I'm selecting is probably more out of convenience. Right. Than it's out of actual, and I've come to kind of love it. And I want to move. Originally, this was my work was going to be like film stills as I did each project. Uh-huh. But I'm wanting to move away from that because I think this is my farewell. Right. Of saying that of stuff, and then looking at other ways to tell the story through different ways of taking pictures, like incorporating cell phone pictures, right. Incorporating other stuff instead of huge fine art photography, and combining that with narrative to tell a story, which I find a lot more interesting to me than. You'll see books, like I have a few books of fine art photography over here. And I'll look online. And basically what I'm seeing of fine art photography now is a bunch of naked women sitting in a big room. Right. And that's not me. I don't want to do nudity or anything like that because it's always felt kind of pervy to take a picture. Mm-hmm. And getting back to why I like stills is it feeds my imagination. Right. And it should feed yours, and it should I hope it feeds everybody who watches it and comes and looks at my show and says, I wonder what this movie's about. Maybe I can construct something in my head to make it make sense. When that's really, not everybody will do that. So, oh, that's a nice picture. Right. But it'll give you sort of a hint of a narrative. Right. And it'll make you think. Maybe, I hope. Right. I hope people will probably say this is shit. I have a big feeling that I'm going to send out this invitation on Facebook and tell everybody to invite their friends, and everybody come in, be like, "Oh, what the fuck is this?" Right. That is my biggest fear about this because this is my first show, and it's very interesting. I've never shown before. Never shown any of my work before, and the last time I showed my work was to my professor. Right. In film school. Nobody's seen anything John's done. And I'm very grateful to my friend Mary Long, who is good friends with the Jay Atkin. Mm-hmm. I'm horrible at names. He does the Cooper Young Arts Fest. And not Cooper Young's Arts Fest, the Cooper Young Art Walk. Right. And it's just, and I think it's the coolest idea is to get people to come out and look at art and then go patronize the restaurants. Yeah. Because if we keep getting people to come there and patronize restaurants, we get people getting to continue to show their art. Yeah. And it's a big win-win for everybody. So, I would love for more people to be able to come to that show and show.
When is the show and where is it at?
Oh, it'll be August 7th. It'll be at Cowork, Memphis, which is really one of the neatest places I've heard of. It's a collaborative workspace, and I'm just for people who don't have an office or don't go to an office, they have a place to go and work and connect and share ideas, which I think is pretty cool. Oh yeah, because that was one of the things I most liked about working at First Tennessee is I had neighbors. Yeah, the cubes, and we kind of talk about the work we're working on, and springboard ideas from that, and help find each other find shortcuts. And that was, that's a cool place for that. It was really neat. I didn't know Memphis had something like that. I didn't even know anything like that existed, period.
Right.
But I'm so excited about being able to just show this work.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, somebody just come and look at it. You don't have to like it. This is my trial by fire.
Yeah.
This is me setting up in terms of everything I've talked about with what it's about. It is me setting up what I'm doing in terms of pictures with narrative, as opposed to just taking pictures. One thing I like is I've been looking at a lot of local photographers, and they're good.
Yeah.
Jamie Harmon's really good. Another good friend of mine, and yours, Fontaine Pearson.
Yeah.
Love her work. I think her stuff is amazing. But what I'm trucking in here is not reality.
Right.
I don't like it. I like what's in my head more than I like the real world.
Right.
And this is look at this. This is what's in my head.
Yeah.
And one thing I do want to send a shout out to is Leah Keys.
Mm-hmm.
When Leah Keys started doing Spill It, I did the first Spill It.
Oh, wow.
And I had been sort of looking for something else at this point when that came around. And getting up in front and starting, that was the seed that started me to this. So if you're listening to this, Leah, thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you. So, that's it.
That's great. So if people want to know more about the show or the artwork or the photography, is there anywhere they can go?
I don't have a website yet. What I'm going to do is probably the next couple of weeks is I'll make my Facebook announcement. It'll be a public one, and I'm going to send it to all of my friends. And if you're listening, you send it to your friends, kind of like the commercial, and they told two people, and they told people, and so on and so on and so on. So I just tell everybody to come. I just want people to look at it.
Yeah.
Basically, I want people to come and patronize, the restaurant, so we can continue to show our art.
Right.
And so other artists will be able to continue to show. And maybe somebody, if I get a lot of people there, I'll get invited back.
Right.
I'll get to show somewhere else.
The name of the exhibit is?
The name of the exhibit is still a work in progress, but it's the Unlegacy of a Film Failure. Not Walter Walters, the Unlegacy. It's just the Unlegacy of it, which refers to me, which refers to Walter Walters. Right. Which refers to a lot of people probably who've been who've tried and failed. I don't know. Everybody, half the people here in Memphis that work in the film industry.
Yeah. Pretty much all of us.
And I do want to say my experience working in film has been wonderful. I've met some really genuinely wonderful people.
Right.
But I don't think it's the medium for me.
Sure.
So it's nothing. I'm sitting there thinking, oh, this came off sounding like an asshole.
Right.
I'm not. I don't intentionally try to be an asshole. I think it's just more of the medium. This is what's making me work, and this is what's making things pop for me.
Sure.
As opposed to a 13, 14-hour day.
It's rough.
It's rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
And I'm 43. I started doing this at 43.
Right.
No, excuse me, I'm 42. I turned 43. I am messed up. But I might as well, I've turned 43 next month. So, I didn't really start doing this until I was in my 40s. And, in your 40s, if you haven't been working on a photo shoot since you're in your 20s,
right,
it's hard.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard. And, I'm used to I was always used to sitting at a desk with a computer for 12 hours a day.
Right.
And going from that to my back hurts after 30 minutes of standing,
right.
45 minutes of standing, my feet hurt. And then just sweating.
Yeah.
Sweating. I didn't know I could stand still and sweat that much.
Yep. It happens.
I had no idea. More power to everyone who does it. I applaud you. You're awesome people. I wish I could do it.
Well, we applaud you and we applaud everybody for listening. And make sure you go see the show. This is great. It's August 7th.
August 7th at Cowork, Memphis in the Cooper Young District. I guess check the flyer, and every place that promotes stuff, they'll have something up.
Awesome.
So
Well, we appreciate you being here, and these are great photographs, so make sure everybody goes and checks this out. And if you want to know more about me and all the ridiculousness I'm up to, you can go to richardalester.com. Thanks, and keep listening.